Have you ever wondered what it looks like when a world ends? Not with a bang, but with a series of agonizing fractures until the whole structure simply gives way. This is the story of the end of the Roman Empire. Not a sudden collapse, but a long, brutal, and terrifying fall from grace. Our story begins not in Rome, but on its borders, with the people pushed to the edge of desperation. The Goths. Fleeing the terror of the Huns from the east, they arrived at the Danube River, the great frontier of the Roman Empire, not as invaders, but as refugees. They saw the empire not as a target, but as a sanctuary. They pleaded to be allowed inside, to be given land, to serve in the legions, to become Roman. The Emperor Valens, ruling from the east, agreed. It seemed like a perfect solution. The empire needed soldiers, it needed farmers, and here was an entire nation offering itself. But what followed was a masterclass in mismanagement and cruelty. The Roman officials tasked with overseeing the crossing were corrupt and greedy. They stole the Goths' food, sold their children into slavery for dog meat, and treated them with unimaginable contempt. The Goths, once hopeful refugees, were now starving prisoners in the very land they had sought for protection. The promise of a new life had turned into a nightmare of exploitation. And a starving person, pushed into a corner with their family on the line, is the most dangerous person in the world. They had been disarmed upon entering the empire, but desperation is its own kind of weapon. They began to fight back. Small skirmishes at first, then raids for food. The local Roman garrisons were overwhelmed. The situation spiraled out of control. Emperor Valens, furious at the chaos, decided to put an end to the Gothic problem himself. He marched his elite field army, the pride of the Eastern Roman Empire, to a place near the city of Adrianople. He was arrogant, overconfident. He refused to wait for reinforcements from the Western Emperor. He believed the might of the Roman legions, a force that had conquered the known world, could easily crush a disorganized rabble of desperate barbarians. He was catastrophically wrong. The Goths were inside the gates. They were starving, betrayed, and now armed for war. On a sweltering August day in 378 AD, the once invincible Roman legions faced the desperate fury of the Gothic cavalry at the Battle of Adrianople. The result was not just a defeat, it was an annihilation. The Roman lines crumpled, broke, and then scattered. 2/3 of the Eastern army lay dead on the field, and with them the Emperor Valens himself, consumed by the chaos, his body never found. The spell of Roman invincibility, which had held the world in awe for centuries, was shattered in a single afternoon. The wolves were now inside the fold, and they had tasted blood. For the next few decades, the Goths wandered the empire, a mobile nation, a scar across the land, leaving a trail of plunder and fear. Their leader, a brilliant and ambitious man named Alaric, saw the truth of the new reality. He understood that the empire was vulnerable. But Alaric did not want to destroy Rome. He wanted to be a part of it. He was a Romanized Goth. He had served in the Roman army. He saw a future for his people within the empire, not outside of it. He begged the Western Roman court, now cowering in the fortress city of Ravenna, for land, for titles, for a place for his people to finally call home. He pleaded for legitimacy. And time again, the Romans, paralyzed by suicidal pride and a deep-seated prejudice, refused him. They saw him as nothing more than a barbarian chieftain, a problem to be managed, not a partner to be negotiated with. They underestimated him, they insulted him, and they pushed him too far. In the year 410 AD, Alaric's patience finally ran out. If he could not join Rome, he would make Rome feel his pain. He did the unthinkable. He marched his army to the city of Rome itself, the ancient, symbolic heart of the world. For 800 years, no foreign enemy had breached its walls. It was the eternal city, a monument to a power that seemed divine. But its walls were old, its defenders few. Alaric laid siege, and after a short time the gates were opened. For 3 days, the Goths burned and looted the city that had once ruled them. The sack was not as destructive as later legends would claim. Alaric, a Christian, ordered his men to spare the churches, but the psychological shock was absolute. The world could not comprehend it. How could this happen? The eternal city had fallen. Where was God? What was left? It was a blow from which the Roman psyche would never recover. The empire, which had once spanned continents, was now just a collection of walled cities, hiding from the darkness that was gathering all around. And the dark was coming. From the vast, windswept steppes of Asia, a new and far greater terror emerged: Attila the Hun. His name alone struck fear into the hearts of Romans and barbarians alike. They called him the Scourge of God, a punishment sent from heaven. Unlike Alaric, Attila had no interest in joining the Roman Empire. He had no desire for titles or lands within its borders. He saw the empire as a fat, dying beast, and he wanted to bleed it dry. His hordes of nomadic warriors swept across Europe like a force of nature, a hurricane of horsemen that the hollowed-out, overstretched legions could not hope to stop. They burned cities, extorted massive payments of gold, and left a trail of utter devastation. The Western Roman Empire was now a ghost, a hollowed-out shell. The provinces, the source of its wealth and manpower, were gone. Britain had been abandoned decades earlier, left to its own fate. Spain and North Africa, the breadbasket of Rome, had been conquered by another Germanic tribe, the Vandals, and it was the Vandals who would deliver the next crippling blow. In 455 A.D., they sailed from their new kingdom in Africa, up the Tiber River, and sacked Rome again. This time the looting was systematic, professional, and utterly thorough. For 2 weeks they stripped the city of its remaining treasures. The pillaging was so complete, so merciless, that their name, Vandal, became a word for destruction itself. The empire was dead. All that remained was the theater, a pathetic pantomime of power. By the year 475 A.D., the emperor of the West was a child, a 15-year-old boy named Romulus Augustulus. A cruel joke of history, his name was a pathetic echo of Rome's legendary founder, Romulus, and its first and greatest emperor, Augustus. He was a puppet, a boy playing dress-up on a hollow throne in Ravenna. The real power was held by the barbarian generals who commanded what was left of the Roman army. These generals were the kingmakers, and the emperors were their pawns. In 476 A.D., one of those generals, a man named Odoacer, decided the play was over. The charade had gone on long enough. There was no grand war, no dramatic assassination, no final battle for the fate of civilization. Odoacer simply walked into the palace, took the imperial crown and robes from the boy, and told him he was no longer emperor. The fiction of a Western Roman emperor was no longer useful. There was no bang. There was no heroic last stand. The Western Roman Empire ended with a quiet, dismissive shrug. Odoacer didn't even kill the boy. He pensioned Romulus Augustulus off, sending him to a comfortable villa in the countryside to live out the rest of his days in obscurity. The last emperor of Rome faded into history, a forgotten postscript to a 1,000-year story. The promise of a universal eternal empire was broken. The eagle, the symbol of Roman power, was dead, and in the silence that fell over the crumbling ruins of the Senate, the Colosseum, and the empty palaces of the Caesars, a new sound was heard. It was the sound of the Dark Ages beginning. Thank you for watching. It's incredible to think how something so immense could just fade away. If you found this journey into the past as fascinating as I did, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories from history. We'll see you next time.